Hey everyone, before the story begins, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. This is a long, emotional journey, and staying till the end matters more than you think. 13 years ago, my wife packed a single suitcase and left our apartment in Lyon without looking back. It was raining that morning, a thin, relentless drizzle that soaked the stone streets and made the city smell of metal and damp leaves. She didn't kiss our son goodbye. She didn't even step into his room. "He'll be better without me," she said at the door, her voice flat, rehearsed. "I can't live like this anymore." Our son, Mathieu, was 4 years old, autistic, sensitive to sound, terrified of sudden change, attached to routines with a devotion that felt sacred. He was lining up his toy trains on the living room floor when she left, humming softly, unaware that the person who gave him life had just decided he was too heavy to carry. She left for another man, a man with money, a man without complications. I remember standing in the doorway long after she disappeared down the stairs, my hand still on the cold handle, realizing that my life had just narrowed into something harder and lonelier and permanent. Raising Mathieu alone reshaped me. I worked nights unloading trucks at a wholesale market outside the city. During the day, I learned the language of therapists, special education plans, sensory overloads, meltdowns that came like storms without warning. I learned which fabrics calmed him, which foods made him gag, which sounds made him curl into himself like a wounded animal. My parents helped when they could. My mother aged quickly, her hands always trembling slightly when Mathieu screamed. My father never said much, but I caught him watching my son with an expression that mixed fear and awe, like he was witnessing a fragile miracle. "Life isn't fair," my father said once, as we fixed a broken cupboard together. "But some people carry more weight, so others don't have to." Mathieu grew slowly, unevenly. He didn't speak until he was 6. When he did, his words were precise, deliberate, like he was afraid of wasting them. He loved maps, trains, schedules, the predictability of numbers. Chaos terrified him, but injustice, he sensed that early. Kids can be cruel without knowing why. By 12, he had learned to keep his head down at school. By 14, he came home once with a split lip and said nothing, just locked himself in the bathroom and sat on the floor for an hour, rocking slightly. I wanted revenge then, on the boys who hit him, on teachers who looked away, on a world that demanded normality like a toll fee. But mostly, I wanted revenge on her. Her name was Claire. She resurfaced when Mathieu was 16. It was winter again, bitter and sharp. I received a letter first. Thick paper, elegant handwriting. She lived in Geneva now, married, wealthy, comfortable. She wrote about regret and growth and wanting to reconnect. Mathieu found the envelope on the kitchen table and traced her name with his finger. "She's the woman from the photos," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "Does she want something?" Always the right question. A month later, she appeared in person, standing across from us in a cafe near Place Bellecour, her coat immaculate, her eyes scanning Mathieu with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. She smiled too often, touched his arm once, awkwardly, then withdrew, as if burned. He didn't flinch. He just observed her, cataloging every movement. "I'd like to be part of his life," she said. Mathieu sipped his hot chocolate carefully. "Why now?" he asked. She hesitated. "Because I was afraid before." Mathieu nodded, as if that explained everything. "Fear doesn't go away," he said. "People just decide who has to carry it." Something in her expression cracked. At 17, Mathieu was taller than me, though he still moved with a certain stiffness, like his body and mind negotiated every step. He took the same bus every morning, sat in the same seat, listened to the same classical playlist on his headphones. One evening, he came home late. His jacket was torn. His hands were shaking violently. "It was an accident," he kept saying. "I followed the schedule. I didn't do anything wrong." It took hours to piece it together. A man had shoved him at the tram stop. Words were exchanged. Mathieu, overwhelmed, pushed back. The man fell, hit his head on the concrete. He died 2 days later. The man was Claire's husband. The world collapsed with terrifying efficiency. Mathieu was arrested, interrogated, diagnosed again, evaluated, reduced to reports and risk assessments. The media sniffed around briefly, then lost interest when the narrative became complicated. Claire did not. She transformed overnight, from distant mother to grieving widow, from absence to accusation. She blamed me. She blamed Mathieu. She blamed fate, God, the city, the doctors who had failed to control him. In court, she wept convincingly. Mathieu sat beside me, rocking slightly, whispering facts under his breath like prayers. Time, location, sequence, cause and effect. He believed truth would protect him. It didn't. He was sentenced to a closed psychiatric facility until further review. When they took him away, he looked back once. "Papa," he said calmly, "this is not logical." "I know," I whispered, "but I'm here." That was when my grief became something sharper. I began to look closely at Claire's life, her money, her husband's businesses, the insurance payout that followed his death, the properties she suddenly moved to sell. Patterns emerged. Her husband hadn't been the man she claimed. He was violent, known to police. Several incidents buried with money and silence. Mathieu hadn't been his first victim, just the one that ended him. I found witnesses, old neighbors, a waitress who remembered bruises, a former assistant who had signed non-disclosure agreements she barely understood. I didn't act quickly. Revenge, I had learned, required structure, like Mathieu's schedules, like maps. Over months, evidence surfaced. Journalists listened. Lawyers reconsidered. A new hearing was granted. Claire unraveled publicly this time. Her story fractured. Her tears felt rehearsed, hollow. Mathieu was released 2 years later. He stepped out into the sunlight, blinking, thinner but intact. "I knew you would finish the pattern," he said, taking my hand. Claire lost everything. Her reputation, her money, her illusion of moral superiority. She tried to speak to Mathieu once, outside the courthouse. He looked at her for a long time. "You are not part of my system," he said simply. "Please don't disrupt it again." We walked away. The Rhone flowed beside us, indifferent and eternal. I had raised my son alone, and in the end, he had taught me the purest form of justice. Not loud, not cruel, but exact. Some people abandon what is difficult. Others stay. And staying, I learned, can change the ending of everything.